When people talk about building a really big pond, something like 40,000 gallons, they often imagine it's completely different than a normal backyard pond. But the truth is, large ponds still deal with the same exact problems as small ones. Fish waste, uneaten food, leaves falling in, runoff from the surrounding landscape, and fine sediments building up over time. No matter how big the pond is, all that waste still has to get processed somewhere. So before you start thinking about waterfalls, landscaping or fish, the first thing you need is a plan for how the pond will handle waste. Every pond is different, the location's different, the soil's different, the fish load's different, and the goals of the pond are different. But what I can do is explain how I think about designing a system, and then you can take the parts that make sense for you on your own pond. But first, if you don't already know me, my name is Kev. I help people build and maintain ponds without spending a fortune. If that sounds like something that interests you, you might like to subscribe and visit Ozponds.com. One of the nice things about large ponds is that they're often more stable than small ponds. Large bodies of water simply change more slowly. They heat up slower, they cool down slower, and they also tend to develop natural water movement. Wind pushes water across the surface, temperature difference creates slow thermal currents, and in natural or unlined ponds, you can even have water slowly entering and leaving the system through seepage. All that helps keep water moving and helps prevent the system from becoming stagnant. But even a large pond can still be overwhelmed. Too many nutrients, too much waste, too much organic material building up. And eventually the pond will slide out of balance. So in my opinion, the most important design decision when planning a large pond is still the same as any pond. How will the system deal with waste and nutrient build-up over time? Once you understand that, everything else starts to fall into place. Once we start talking about a 40,000 gallon pond, the next question is, what kind of pond do we actually want? Because the design approach can change quite a lot depending on the goal. If the goal's a natural looking wildlife pond, the system can actually be quite simple. You might focus on things like good aeration, a wide diversity of plants, lots of habitat for organisms. This can work in both lined or unlined systems. The water in a pond like this usually won't be crystal clear all the time, but that's not really the goal. The goal's a healthy ecosystem. You're creating habitats for everything from tiny phytoplankton and microorganisms all the way up to insects, frogs, birds and other wildlife coming to drink. You can still add features like streams or waterfalls if you like, but the basic idea is allowing the pond to break down and recycle waste naturally. Depth becomes important here. If the pond is too shallow, sediments build up quickly and the system may still require manual intervention. But deeper ponds allow sediments to settle and slowly break down, which means the larger and deeper the system becomes, the longer it can often run without creating too much work. A koi pond's a completely different philosophy. If the priority is large, expensive fish, then the whole system revolves around protecting those fish. In that situation, the goal is to export as much waste as possible out of the pond and into the filters that can be cleaned easily. There's lots of ways to do this, but in many ways a dedicated koi pond behaves more like an oversized aquarium. You're actively managing the environment rather than letting nature handle most of the work. You can still add in natural elements if you want, but the priority is the fish and keeping the water quality extremely consistent. The style of pond that I personally like sits most somewhere between those two approaches. A large garden pond that still looks natural but also supports fish. In these ponds we can combine the ideas. We can still enjoy fish, plants, waterfalls, streams and aeration. We can build in filtration systems that blend into the landscape. Waste still gets moved toward filters, but we're also comfortable with some material settling inside the pond and feeding the food web. That food web becomes important. All those tiny organisms help process nutrients and also provide natural food for the fish, which often means we don't need to feed them nearly as much. In my opinion, this approach gives you the best of both worlds. Then there are large natural ponds, like farm dams or natural lakes. In these systems, the focus shifts again. Instead of filtering water inside the pond, the focus becomes the catchment area. In other words, what happens to the water before it reaches the pond. If you look at lakes in pristine environments, the surrounding land is full of plant diversity, healthy soils, fungi, bacteria, root systems, and the rainwater moves slowly through the environment. The soil and plant life naturally filter sediments and nutrients before the water eventually reaches the pond. Even long after a rain event, groundwater can continue feeding the pond through aquifers. Compare that to many modern landscapes where water runs quickly across hard surfaces, picking up fertilizers, pollutants, sediments, and all of that ends up in the pond and can quickly cause problems. So when designing a natural pond like this, improving the catchment area often becomes just as important as designing the pond itself. So once you know what type of pond you want, this is the fun part. For me personally, the design phase is actually my favourite part. Because once you understand the goal of the pond, everything else comes back to the same basic question. How will the system manage waste? Fish waste, uneaten food, leaves and sediment. All that material has to go somewhere, and the main tool we use to control that is water movement. The more water movement we have, the more control we have over where the waste ends up. If a pond has very little movement, most of that waste will simply settle inside the pond. In a wildlife pond, that's often perfectly fine. The waste settles in the deepest areas and becomes part of the sediment layer, where bacteria and organisms slowly break it down. Adding some aeration helps a lot here. Oxygen supports bacteria and organisms that process that waste. It doesn't make the waste disappear completely, but it helps recycle nutrients throughout the ecosystem. Over time, that material slowly turns into sediment and soil, just like leaves breaking down on the forest floor. One useful design trick is creating a deeper section where waste naturally accumulates. If you know where the sediment will collect, then you know exactly where to focus when you want to remove buildup. That removal might be a net, a pond vacuum, or a dirty water pump. But by concentrating the buildup into one area, you can remove the largest amount of waste without disturbing the rest of the pond ecology too much. Now if you're building a koi pond, that approach changes again. In that system, the goal is to remove waste as quickly as possible. That usually means strong circulation, lots of aeration, bottom drains or suction grids, and mechanical filters. The purpose of water movement is very deliberate. We're trying to move waste off the bottom of the pond and into the filters where it can be removed. But those filters will need constant maintenance, because the more waste you send to a filter, the faster it fills up. That's why I often describe dedicated koi ponds as being more like oversized aquariums. They work very well, but they require active management. The style of pond I personally enjoy the most is natural-looking garden ponds with fish. In these ponds we combine both ideas. We allow some waste to settle and feed the ecosystem, but we also export some waste through filtration systems. In ponds like this, I often use my bog filter and intake bay combination. On a large pond like this, I'd also consider aeration, circulation jets, and possibly a suction grid. The goal isn't to remove every bit of waste, it's to maintain a healthy balance between natural processes and mechanical filtration. Then if the pond is meant for swimming, depth becomes useful for another reason. A deeper area helps prevent sediment from getting stirred up when people move around in the water. Again, it's just about thinking ahead. Where will waste collect? Where will water move? And how much maintenance do you want to take on? Because this is the trade-off people need to understand. The more waste you send to the filters, the cleaner the pond will look, but the more often those filters will need to be cleaned. Whereas if you allow some material to settle naturally and it doesn't bother you visually, then the pond may require much less maintenance. And that's exactly what happens in natural ponds and lakes. Sediment slowly accumulates in deeper areas and stays there. If that sediment gets stirred up too much, it can release trapped nutrients and trigger algae blooms. So sometimes leaving it alone is actually the better option. Personally, I like to keep things simple. Balance natural processes with circulation and filtration. That philosophy is what led me to create the Ozponds blueprint. It's not about copying my ponds, it's about understanding the system so you can design something specific to your goals, location, and maintenance preferences. When you're designing a pond this size, you're really weighing up trade-offs. How clean do you want the water? What's the most cost-effective way to achieve that? And what's the lowest maintenance you can realistically get away with? Because every decision you make changes those things. For me personally, I'll often start by running some numbers through the system I use when designing ponds. These days I'll just ask Virtual Kev to run the calculations. So for example, I ask, can you design a 40,000 gallon wildlife pond? And here's roughly what it came back with. 40,000 gallons is about 151,000 litres. I prefer working in metric, so a practical footprint for the size of that pond would be something like 18 metres by 10.5 metres and an average depth of around a metre. That's at an irregular shape, so it looks like it calculated that at 80% of the surface area. That gives you roughly the right volume, while still leaving room for natural shaping around the edges. For a wildlife pond, you wouldn't want it to be one giant bathtub. You want different depth zones, shallow edges for wildlife, mid-depth plant shelves, and deeper refuge zones. So Virtual Kev's given us some recommendation, and that variety creates habitat diversity, and ponds tend to work much better when they aren't all one uniform depth. So then we move on to filtration. For wildlife ponds, I usually aim for a bog filter around 5% of the pond's volume. So for 40,000 gallon pond, that works out to be about 8,000 litres or roughly 2,000 gallons. Then we work out the flow rate. The formula I use is the bog volume times 6. So if the bog holds around 8,000 litres, the ideal flow rate would be roughly 48,000 litres per hour. That's the ideal target. But on larger ponds, you can often run slower than that. The absolute minimum I'd usually accept is about 1 bog volume per hour. So realistically, you might run anywhere from between 8,000 litres per hour to 48,000 litres per hour. And that's where variable speed pumps are really useful. On a pond this size, I'd normally run at least 2 pumps. I'll probably need 2 just for the bog filter itself, especially if I want to hit that 48,000 litres per hour target. And I might add another pump for things like waterfalls, streams, or additional circulation. And that gives me more control and also a bit of redundancy if something fails. Then when we size the intake bay, the rough rule is the void space equals the pump flow divided by 60. So let's just say the pumps are drawing around 40,000 litres per hour. The intake bay would need at least 670 litres of void space. Personally, I'd oversize it. Large intake bays make ponds much easier to maintain, especially if you're lazy like me. From there you can start adjusting the design depending on what you want. Maybe you add aeration, circulation jets along the stream, bigger waterfalls, more plant shelves, or maybe you simplify it. The point isn't to copy this exact design, it's just a starting framework. And that's really how I use the system. The blueprint gives you the formulas and the design principles, Virtual Kev helps you run the numbers and explore ideas, and then you can tweak the design in whatever direction suits your pond. And if something doesn't make sense, that's where the private community can help as well. Most questions that come up have usually been answered in a video, a blog post, or by someone who's built something similar. So when someone asks me how I'd build a 40,000 gallon pond, the honest answer is, it depends. It depends on what you want the pond to look like, what animals you want to keep, how clean you want the water, and how much maintenance you're willing to do. Because every pond's a set of trade-offs. You can push a system towards crystal clear water, but that usually means more pumps and more filters and more maintenance. Or you can lean towards a natural ecosystem pond, where some sediment and nutrients stay in the system and feed the food web. Personally, I like to sit somewhere in the middle. A pond that still looks natural, but has enough circulation and filtration that it stays healthy and enjoyable without turning into a full-time job. And when you're dealing with a pond this size, the biggest thing to focus on is always the same. Where's the waste going? If you understand that one question, designing the rest of the system becomes much easier. If you've got a pond design question you'd like me to cover in a future video, there's a button on the website where you can submit it. I can't promise I'll get to them all, but if people enjoyed these kinds of design videos, I'm happy to do more. Or you can just let me know in the comments section. And if you were going to design a pond this size, what would it be for? Koi, ducks, turtles, swimming, or just general peace and tranquility? And if you're looking for something else to watch, and you want to see how the pump actually connects to the bog filter and intake bay, you might want to watch the video that pops up on your screen next. That one walks through the simple filtration system I use in most of my ponds. I hope this was helpful. Thanks for watching. See ya.